Hi, everybody. I'm Clint Peck with Beef Magazine. With us today on this program is Donnell Brown, owner of the R.A. Brown Ranch located in Throckmorton, Texas. Donnell is here to visit with us today about his concerns over threat of the new World Screwworm and its implications to the cattle industries in both the United States and Mexico. Thanks a lot, Donnell, for being with us today. Before we dive into a discussion about the screwworm, can you give us a little background on yourself, the ranch, and what's going on in Throckmorton, Texas these days?
Hey, absolutely. We have been blessed with a wonderful spring and a lot of grass growing, and our tank dams are all full and cows are fat. So we're blessed. Live in north central Texas, 120 miles west of Fort Worth. I'm a fifth generation to own and manage R.A. Brown Ranch, a primarily seed stock as well as commercial cow-calf and quarter horse business. And thankful to be in business. My folks are still here, 3 siblings, and my wife and 2 sons, and now 3 granddaughters and 2 grandsons on the way.
Great. 2 on the way.
We just found out our son Lanham's having twins. I guess I should say his wife's expecting twins.
Right. Well, we kind of figured that. Yeah. Well, great. Well, thanks so much for being with us today, Donnell. Okay. So understand that there was a live program yesterday and a video teleconference coming out of Amarillo that underscored the threat of the screwworm in the United States. I'm getting the feeling that the U.S. beef industry, especially cattle ranchers, feeders in your neck of the woods there in Texas, New Mexico, maybe Kansas, you're kind of moving from being concerned to having a sense of urgency over keeping this pest out of North America. Tell us about it.
We really are. It is concerning. Actually, 3 different meetings going on yesterday around the state. I was participating with the one for Texas Tech Vet School in Amarillo, where we had over 500 people online and about 100 people in person, most of which were veterinarians, as that was the target audience. Our Texas Southwestern Cattle Raisers had a board meeting yesterday via Zoom as well, and that was one of the hot topics. And our extension service at Texas A&M also. So yeah, it has become a sense of urgency as it's obvious that we had the screwworms in the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. Right. And then thanks to the work of diligent ranchers, to our livestock organizations, and to our federal government, we've developed a program with technology to push those flies back into Central America, back to the Panama Canal, and a bit beyond that. And the thinnest point, if you will, the landmass, the thinnest point between North and South America, so right. that we could build a virtual wall with sterile flies to help keep those from migrating northward. Now, since 2020 and COVID and the inability to keep full staff and people going and all of that to make those sterile flies or produce them and broadcast them and identify, it has slowly breached that gap and moved on northward through Guatemala, Nicaragua, all the way into southern Mexico. So the Panama Canal, by my best map calculation, is about 56 hours drive time from the southern tip of Texas. Okay. And now those flies are less than 12 hours, as we know, verified cases south of the Texas border.
So verified cases, we don't know what may be out there that haven't been detected, correct?
Yeah, exactly right. And here's the challenge, as Mexico goes northward, that landmass widens out. And so it's harder for these sterile flies to be able to, you just got to have a lot more of them to cover a lot more ground. Let's look at it this way. It's like the southern border and all the immigrants coming through during our previous administration. And, if we could neck it down to just the Panama Canal, that's about 60 miles. That's pretty easy to cover. We start covering hundreds of miles. That makes it so much harder as we're spread out. And, the traditional flow of cattle through Mexico from southern Mexico up to the Texas border, crossing, going into U.S. feed yards to help fill our beef supply. That's a normal flow. And so, here's the thing. Cattle are on their migration of producers moving them to northern Mexico to grass to win, and usually when the border is open, but if it opens, for those cattle to come across. Well, hey, let me just say, I'm no expert, but my cowboy logic says as those cattle are moving from southern Mexico to northern Mexico, those screwworm likelihood of getting closer to our southern border is getting scary, is the word I'm going to use. That's my word, because I am concerned about that pest and here, let's talk about the pest. Let's talk about screwworm. All right. All flies make maggots.
Right.
The New World Screwworm makes a maggot that eats living flesh.
Right.
And so it can get into a navel. It can get into a navel of any warm-blooded animal. Right. And that can be a cow, a sheep, a lamb, a goat, horses, dogs, cats, deer. I saw my first set of twins yesterday, both of them still wet. And if that screwworm fly was here, they could lay eggs on that wet navel, and those screwworms would go up into that navel and eat that fawn alive. And so it can also affect humans. And that's the scary part of how devastating it can be, like right. It was in the 60s and 70s here in the United States before we successfully pushed that way back away from our southern border.
So, Donald, we saw a bit of a hitch in the get along this week on Tuesday when a news media out of Missouri made an announcement online, and it was only what we found out. It was only a Google reference to New World Screwworm being found in Missouri. I went on immediately and I clicked on that website, got to the station's website. That article had either never really appeared or had been scrubbed from that site very rapidly. But in the meantime, you saw what feeder cattle futures did. They dropped like a rock going all the way out to January. And it was only this really goofy little news piece that was very innocuous, but it hit us right between the eyes.
Exactly. And, hey, we want to be diligent in surveillance. We all need to. And here's, yes, it made the market really drop yesterday, all fear-based, okay? And we need to be science and factual based. So I really encourage all producers, all veterinarians, search New World Screwworm, see what it looks like. See that it's got two little eye-looking things on the back end, and on the mouth end, it's got two round deals of spines. And the fly has a metallic blue color with bright orange eyes, like the University of Florida colors. I mean, it's interesting.
How big is it, Donald?
It's not much. My understanding, and I've not seen one. Now, I do remember seeing screwworms when I was about 5 years old. But
okay.
They're about the same size as a regular housefly. Really, not a lot of difference, as I recall.
Okay. All right. So they're not tiny by any means. They're not pinhead size.
No. And that, they're around in South America and Central America. But hey, here's the thing. We do need to be diligent. We do need, if you think you see one, and here's the thing. I had a gentleman that was here with supper with us last night, 92 years old, talking about doctoring screwworms through the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and how they make a gosh awful smell because they're eating live flesh, not necrotic flesh like a normal maggot would do. Right. So we need to really be on the surveillance deal, report it to veterinarians. But gosh, don't put on social media, hey, look what I saw today. Let's let the professionals make those announcements.
Right. So the dust is maybe settling just a little bit out of the programs this week down there in Texas. What is going to be done with regard to try to get this screwworm situation under control? What's the plans?
Oh, yeah.
Or are there any?
Well, let's look at it this way. Here's I'm this may be a stretch with this analogy, but here's what I want to say. I think we as U.S. cattle producers and food producers are in a state of trying to figure out protocols, trying to figure out the best game plan. There is no doubt the best game plan is the same game plan that fixed the problem in the 1960s and 70s. And that was the invention of the technology to radiate flies to sterilize both male and female. And the neat part is the female screwworm fly only mates one time. And so if she gets mated to a sterile fly, she'll produce unfertilized eggs and it will stop the life cycle. That is the long-term approach. I think, and keep this in mind, there is one of those plants in Panama. The U.S. owns like 90% of that, and it is for security against screwworm in the United States. Now, it's being working in Central and Southern Mexico and Central America now, but right now they've stopped releasing flies in Central America, and they're going to the front lines in Southern Mexico to, again, try to put up a barrier to stop those flies and move them back south. But here's the problem. In the 60s and 70s, we had two additional plants, one in far South Texas and one in Mexico, that produced 500 million flies, if I remember right, 500 million sterile flies per day.
Holy moly.
The plant in Panama, as I understand, produces 100 million flies per day. And that can't, it's not enough to keep up with the wider landmass. So we need infrastructure. We need our producers, our livestock organizations, our federal government to fund the building of these sterile fly manufacturing plants so that we can get those and then fund the release of those through airplanes so that we can, that's our best wall of defense. Now, Clint, with that said, let me say, we have more tools in the toolbox today than we did decades ago. We have ivermectins and we have doramectins like Dectomax and Ivermect that can help with this, and it will help with this. But man, to me, the real answer is stopping the life cycle, and proved it in the 1960s that sterile flies can happen. The problem is it will likely take 2 years to get one up and going and ready to release flies. And I'm concerned that we may see screwworms here sometime in the next 6 to 15 months. And so let's just say 6 to 12 months.
Right.
And that's scary. That's speculation from a producer's perspective. But see, those flies can get caught up in hurricanes too. And we're just getting into hurricane season. And they can move into, they can get migrated north with those hurricanes as they usually hit Mexico and come right up north. So that's a concern as well.
So going back to the breeding of those sterile males, I understand that there are some facilities maybe in Mexico, possibly in California, that were used for breeding sterile flies for the Mediterranean fruit fly that infected the orchards in California. I understand that those are kind of in mothballs now. What do you know about those, and how fast could they be kind of ramped up and repurposed for the screwworm program?
Well, we hope some of that can be reinvigorated. The cotton boll, they had an eradication program, similar type program with that in the boll weevil program. Okay. So we know it works. It's safe. It's safe for the food supply, and we need it for these flesh-eating screwworms. So I employ all of you to contact your state and especially your federal government leaders and talk to them about how, and your livestock organizations about how, hey, we need to be proactive, not reactive. We need to be ready for this to happen. But let's go back, Clint, to that. Where are we and how are we trying to do it? I look at it like, you remember the fall of 2019, and I'm going to make a stretch here because it's not the same as COVID, but there are similarities. Right. There are similarities in that it was far away. All right, COVID was in China. People were dying. Right. People were panicking. It was a news concern. All right. The screwworms are a new concern to most people that are under 60 years old because they've never experienced it in the United States. Also, it can cause death, like COVID. It can cause death. And if untreated, a lot of animals that are affected with screwworms will actually die. So there are some similarities. You know, the good news is that it only comes in, it's not spread through your breath, through aerosol, like COVID. It's spread through flies laying eggs on open wounds. Now, that can be a tick bite. That can be a horse fly bite. That can be
a nick with barbed wire.
It can be, a nick from barbed wire. That's exactly right. It can be making an ear tag hole in in livestock. It can be any of the wet navel, dehorning, branding, and if that brand peels, all of those things exposing living flesh, those are places that can happen. So that's a concern. I think we're all still trying to figure out. Mostly, let's work to make sure we do our level best to keep it out of the United States. If it gets into the United States, you know, they're talking about isolation zones and restricting travel. And, you know, I mean, you think about how the broad tentacles of this with wildlife, with horses, rodeo stock show cattle. I mean, all the trends, not only just the feeder cattle and lambs and hogs, but all of the, you know, entertainment cattle and horses and livestock. So it's scary. So I'm not putting it in the same category with COVID. I just wanted to draw some parallels of kind of how it's similar, but how it's different.
So today, Donnell, the southern border, the U.S. is closed to all cattle movement and all livestock movement north. What's that? How is that affecting the livestock industry in the U.S.? And I say that a bit because there's some people, the further north you get, kind of the less concern there is with regard to the movement of those cattle. In fact, there's some feeders up north that are going, well, you know, what the heck? Who cares? I'm sure down in your neck of the wood, there are a lot of people that care.
Oh, yeah, it's very top of mind here. I think another thing that's important to realize is that historically, typically the screwworm fly has not gone north. I'm going to say about Interstate 70. Okay. Yep. Denver to Kansas City is really kind of, because at 46 degrees, that's too cold for the screwworm fly. That's a blessing. All right. We know something that's going to stop it. The regular flow of cattle, we do import a lot of cattle, feeder cattle from Mexico. And man, these feed yards are saying, please open that border. We need cattle. The packing plants, we're really short on cattle. The packing plants are saying, please, we need cattle. And so I understand that. But I think from a national security issue, it is in our best interest for the livestock industry that we keep that southern border closed. That's my opinion, that we keep that closed to help keep those flies south of the Mexican. It's a lot easier to stop it at the wall that Trump built than it is once it might cross into the United States.
Got it. Okay. Well, Donnell, you know, hopefully we can help get the word out. Hopefully we'll be working with our people in Washington, D.C. to get some funding going to fund those breeding labs, and then the activity to get those the aerial activity that it takes to get those flies scattered out across those risk areas in Mexico, and we won't have to see that border be closed for too much dang long.
Yeah, I mean, we want that. I mean, we like fair trade, and so it's an important part of our economy. And so I think that's important. It's important to keep feed yards and the infrastructure of our industry open. We don't want packing plants to start to close because we will, I think, very soon be rebuilding this cow supply. through cow-calf. But man, if we start getting losses due to screwworms, it's gonna be tough on our industry as a whole. And I think that's real important. I want to share one more thing, and that is, as you think about it, we've got to go be leaders in our industry. And I wore this red shirt today because I was reminded of the story of the Navy captain that back in the day, when they see battleships on the horizon, and the guy up top with his monoscope, and hey, Captain, one battleship on the horizon, and he would turn to his first mate and say, "Hey, get me my red shirt," and they would go to battle and they'd kill that one, and then later the next day, they see two ships on the horizon. Hey, go get my red shirt. They kill those two battleships, and they're going to war, and everything kind of settles down. And somebody said, "Captain, why do you always ask us to get your red shirt?" He said, "Well, I do that so that if I get injured in battle, all of you fighting around me will not see the blood and be worried about the leadership of this battleship." And they were like, "Oh, good." And then all of a sudden you hear 11 battleships on the horizon. And he turns and says, "Go get my brown pants." That's kind of, I think, about how close we are on this screwworm deal. It's starting to get pretty serious the closer it gets to the border. Yeah. And so I do encourage everybody to get involved for the best interests of the entire U.S. beef industry, not just beef. And we appreciate Beef Magazine, what you guys do, but for all warm-blooded animals. We need to keep that stopped, and we'll be better for it.
All right. Donnell Brown, Throckmorton, Texas, R.A. Brown Ranch. We appreciate you being with us today. Good luck, and we'll circle around, and hopefully our paths will cross before too long.
Sounds great, man. Thank you so much.
All right. This is Clint Peck for Beef Magazine. Thank you for joining us today.